In today's video, I'm taking you along a creative retreat weekend. I came up with this idea after starting the Artist's Way a month or so ago, as well as watching Tiffany, known as Apple Cheeks, here on YouTube. I've been inspired to take my creative journey to another level, which for me includes fully immersing myself in creative experiences. The Artist's Way also got me thinking of a written piece I read in college. I can't recall who wrote it now, but it was about the need for dedicated safe spaces in order to fully immerse yourself in the work you're doing. And so, here's my first endeavor into this process. Alright y'all, I figured I would do a little haul of specifically just the art things that I'm bringing with me on this trip. I figured the other stuff wouldn't be as interesting, but I am going again with my Luca duffel. I love this thing so much and I definitely want to test it out on like a weekend trip level as opposed to just a one-day thing that I did with my work visit that I had recently. But anyway, let's get into these things. So the way that I categorized it, I will kind of guide you through each category. So the first thing are paints, of course. So we've got acrylic paints here. I'm trying to focus only on acrylic paints while I'm on this trip. So I have a bunch of acrylic paints. These are also acrylic. And then I have brushes. These two brushes are for acrylic painting, and as you can see, they're small because I'm only going to be working on small pieces of paper or small canvases, so that's why I have that. And then these two brushes are actually watercolor brushes. Now, I know I didn't bring any watercolor paints, but I am going to be visiting an art store during my trip, and I think they sell watercolors, so if I do end up picking up watercolors, I will have brushes ready to go. And then the next category are palettes. So again, I have a watercolor palette here. I took this out from my traveling watercolor palette. I don't want to bring the watercolors, I just want to bring the palette because again, I'm not sure if I'm going to end up buying new watercolors. So I have that just ready to go. And then this is my acrylic paint palette. I know it's got dry paint all over the place. I am still learning how to figure this whole acrylic paint thing out. So just have that. And that's those two categories. The next category are books, so like learning stuff, educational stuff. So I have the Artist's Way, of course, because I want to touch upon the Artist's Way, whether it's like going back through these sticky notes or starting a new chapter. I'm not too sure, but I do want to bring it just in case. The next book is this book called The Madman's Gallery. It's essentially like a museum in a book. It has so much photos, inspiration, and then it has like explanations for the pieces and the eras and stuff like that. So I figured this would be super inspirational to have handy. And then this last book is a really vintage book that I found at a used bookstore in my local town. It's an acrylic painting book, so it's like an instructional book, and I think I personally need it. So I am okay with using a vintage book. I think the basics are the basics, so I should be just fine. So I'm bringing that with me as well. And those are my three educational books that I'll be bringing. The next category are like tools or places where I'm going to be painting, sketching, all that good stuff. So I have my sketchbook. I feel like I showed this recently in a hobby favorites vlog or hobby favorites video, I'm pretty sure, but it's just a very standard sketchbook with very thin paper. This is good for like pencil and pen, and that's pretty much it. So bringing this in case we do like a visit to a museum or something and I have something really quick and handy to use. This is let's see, cold press. Yeah, this is cold press paper, so it has like texture, and I really like that kind of paper, and I'm going to use this for painting, of course. It's not completely empty. It has a couple of pieces in there, but it's about 90% empty, so I feel like I will fill as much as I possibly can during my trip using this. And then I have this sketchbook. I don't know what brand it is. I got it a long time ago, and it's actually about 80% finished. I use it for watercolor in the past, but I have a few pages here, as you can see, and I feel like that would be a lot to get through. So these two are my main painting canvases that I'll be using. The sketchbook, again, for when I am out and about. And then this, you may recognize, is my morning pages book. I'm hoping I can do some morning pages while I'm there because my brain will be in a very creative space. So hoping that during this trip I'll be able to do morning pages at least one of those days that I'm there.
that's that category. And then the last category is not really a category. This is just my bag where I keep a bunch of art supplies. I'm hoping to throw in a bunch of these things into here. Let's see what I can fit when the time comes. But what I have in there right now are these sticky notes. That's for the artist's way. I think I just have pens, pencils, and a mild liner and an eraser in there. So yeah, those are all of my art supplies. Logan has come to check things out. And maybe I'll be coming back home with some more stuff.
Okay, friends, so I wanted to, it's actually a few days after my creative retreat, but I wanted to share with you my Notion board that I use for planning basically any trip ever. I have this Notion board here that I duplicate from previous boards that I've used whenever I go traveling, and I just adjust it based off of the location or the reason for my trip. So let's jump into this really quickly. I categorize things by 3 tabs. So the first tab is the location that I'm going to. This is Fishtown in Philadelphia. Then I have personal things that I'm going to be looking at before, during, and after my trip. And then I have archive. Archive is essentially what I use to move these things over to here once I've completed everything in here. So in reality, all of this should be under the archive, but I wanted to show you what it looks like in the midst of planning a trip. So let's jump into each of these things. I'm going to start on this side. By the way, I just titled it based off of what I was doing for this trip. Usually I actually just put the location, but let's jump into hotel. So this section over here, I drop in just useful details or useful links to things so that I can easily grab it. I don't put my reservation stuff in here. I keep that in my email. I just feel like it's kind of redundant if I were to just plop everything in here when I can easily do it through my email, if that makes sense. Like, I'm not trying to do extra work here, if that makes sense at all. But anyway, I have a bookmark here of the website for the hotel. So if I wanted to grab any information, details about the hotel, I can grab it straight from their website. I have the address here because this was a road trip and it was just easy to put it in here so that I can send it straight to our GPS. It was just an easy thing to copy and paste. I have the check-in time, the checkout time, and this was a check-in hotel. So I wrote down a note here that they will text a code to me when it was time for me to check in, which is exactly what happened. And then I also put in parking information because this hotel did not have like on-site parking. They said that there was an parking lot nearby and the information was sent via an app. So again, I didn't want to be redundant and copy the information from the app into here. I just wrote a note to remember that it was in an app, if that makes sense. I'm hoping that everything makes sense. I don't know why I'm repeating that over and over and over again. Sorry. But yeah, that's the hotel tab, and we can move that over to archive because we're done with that. The next thing is things to do, and this is essentially an itinerary. Because this was just a hotel-driven type of trip, I kept the amenities up here. I felt like that would be useful information. And then usually I divide things up by the day. So we have Saturday here, we have Sunday here, and then all of the activities and things associated with the day. I also usually, whenever it's a longer trip, I lay out all of the meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but I did not do it here because it was, or at least not so extensively, because it was just an overnight trip. So you'll see it kind of randomly in spots, but usually I have it laid out like Saturday, breakfast, lunch, dinner, and then I go into the activities and stuff like that. So this is essentially what you're going to be seeing in the video, but let's move on. I'll also archive that. And then personal things. This packing list is the same packing list I use for all of my trips. I just adjust it based off of weather, location, things like that. And for this particular creative retreat, because it was a creative retreat, I have a section here for art supplies because that is very specific to this trip. So that's what I use. It has check boxes in there so that I can easily check and uncheck. When I'm there, I basically uncheck everything, and then before I get onto the trip, I check everything off. Yeah. Okay. So the next thing is content ideas. So I wanted to get a lot of content during this trip, and I wanted to make sure that I didn't forget anything because I would be filming a lot of things all at the same time. So I have content ideas literally laid out here. You're going to see most of this on Instagram, TikTok, and in this video. So if you want to see more from the trip, check out my Instagram and TikTok as well because there's slightly different stuff there. Then I have house care. Usually this is more extensive because we usually have a house sitter, but because it was just an overnight trip, we didn't have a house sitter. So it just has basic things like charge tech before we go on our trip, pack our bags, and check the car, again, because it was a road trip. And then the last thing is cat care. It should actually be pet care, but once again, we usually have a house sitter who always takes care of the cats as well, and our rabbit is a little bit more low maintenance, so I just have it here as cat care. But I have setting up the auto feeder for the cats. We're really trying to make sure that they are good about using the auto feeder because they can be pretty spoiled and they won't eat unless I'm feeding them, so I'm trying to build up that habit. So there's that. Then I have setting up a backup plan to hide food for Riley. Logan is known to hoard all of the food. He'll eat food from all of the bowls in the house, and Riley's a little bit more submissive, so she lets him do it. So I had to do a backup plan and hide food in her bed under our bed to make sure that she ate, and I think it was a success because I came home and that bowl was empty. Fingers crossed that that was Riley that ate it because I don't think Logan goes near that bed ever. But yeah, we have also feeding the bunny. So the bunny is there, don't worry. And then topping off all the water for all of the pets. And that's essentially it. Like I said, this is a duplicate from a template that I use every time I go traveling. So it can get more extensive if it's a longer trip. It can include a lot of things that are not here if it's for an international trip, things like that. But this is what I use always, and it has been incredible. It keeps me on track of everything, and I can start planning in here maybe a week in advance or months in advance, and everything is just here. It's easy to access on the computer, on the phone, things like that. But I just wanted to throw this into the video to hopefully be helpful. So I hope you enjoyed that, and let's get back into the video. So before I jumped right into painting in this gorgeous space, by the way, I loved this hotel so much. It's called Locale Fishtown. I did a stop at a quirky little art store in the area called Keystone Creative, and I completely forgot to film it because I was overwhelmed by all of the cute art supplies, namely the locally handmade watercolor paints that you can create your own palette from, which I did. You'll see me setting it up soon. And in that store, I met such a sweet person named Liz who rang me up and we started chatting about art, pursuing our creative journeys, and things like that. It was such a cool moment to meet fellow creatives, and if you're watching, hi Liz. And then we got to the hotel, where you'll see me painting with acrylics first because that was what I wanted to focus on. I'm using a photo I found online as inspo. I'm pretty sure it was Pinterest, and I'm learning that naturalism, I think that's what it's called, is my preference. I like plants, nature, landscapes, animals, fruits and veggies. Those are my favorite to paint. And so this is a lemon tree. I'm not mainly an acrylic focused painter, so I brought a book to kind of read and learn from, and I'm noticing that with acrylics, you start with a base, and then you build by layers of detail. And then you work from dark colors to light, I think. As opposed to watercolor, which I'm a little bit more familiar with, you start with a base and then you build layers of color, depending on how vibrant you want it, and then detail. And then you work from light to dark, since you're building up color or vibrancy. Anyway, I left the actual lemons and final details to after dinner, which is why you don't see it here. And we had reservations at a beautiful old-fashioned inn kind of spot, which I'm learning is the vibe in Philadelphia. And it was bustling because it happened to be St. Patrick's Day weekend. I completely forgot that, oops. But it was fine, and it was fun and lively, and we had an amazing dinner, and then we walked back to the hotel. It was about a 20-minute walk. And we stopped for ice cream at a random pop-up we walked past, and there was like a bunch of people outside. Once back in the hotel room, I finished that lemon tree and I gave my new watercolors a go, and oh my gosh, they're amazing. They're super pigmented and they're creamy and just a dream to work with. So I did a mini landscape piece while sipping on tequila and then retreated to the couch for video games, a few more drinks, and laughter with Ian, who has been coloring and playing on his Steam Deck during this entire retreat. The next day we checked out and went to another bustling restaurant for breakfast where I had one of the most delicious iced vanilla lattes I've had while out in a while. From there, we went to the Barnes Foundation, and oh my goodness, I did not realize upon arriving at the Barnes that I'd be in presence of some of the most incredible pieces of artwork in history. It's unreal to imagine how old these pieces are and how beautifully preserved they are and how much meaning, history, story, culture, and power these pieces have. And I can only hope that we treasure art in modern days the way that we treasure these, because a work of art is not just these treasured historical pieces by the same sets of hands. It's all around us now. But yeah, after the Barnes, we headed back home, and I actually finished my watercolor piece while home, which I kind of liked because I got to bring the habit of creating back home. I did just want to highlight some slow living lessons that I learned while on this trip. Book the trip, explore, invest in learning experiences, invest time and space to your focus area. Not only does it bleed into the creative space, but it's a huge slow living foundation, and it prioritizes you and your interests and your joys.
All right, friends, so it has actually been a few days since my creative retreat trip, and I kind of wanted to come in a few days later to tell you how it went, kind of reflect on it, and share some things that I learned, if I learned anything, and if I achieved what I set out to do with this creative retreat. I think my creative retreat was a complete success. I had such an incredible time from the beginning to the end, even just driving there and driving back. It was just very fulfilling. It was peaceful, it was restful, but it was also really productive. I got a lot done, and I tried my best to kind of push my self-criticism to the side during this trip, because that's just something that comes with being an artist, and I'm learning a lot more about that, especially while doing the artist's way. I tried my best to not think about this trip in terms of quantity, in terms of how much can I get done during this overnight trip, and more so about how fulfilled do I feel and how happy and proud am I of myself for getting whatever it is that I get done. And I definitely feel really proud of the progress that I made during this trip, not just while on the trip, but also afterwards, because I feel like I'm in a huge creative flow right now, and this is not common for me, especially during the springtime. I'll be honest, my creative flow only shows up really abundantly during the fall season. That is one season out of the 4, and for me, I don't want to be okay with that anymore. I don't want to settle into that. I want to be able to have a creative flow year round, and what I'm learning through the Artist's Way, I don't mean for this to be an Artist's Way recap, but what I'm learning is that the way that other people nurture their skills or hone their skills or upkeep their skills is something that's a little bit more straightforward. It's a little bit more tactical and practical. And when you're an artist, when you're a creator, you have to do that same type of practice, that same type of honing and nurturing of skill, just in an alternative way. And so these kinds of trips, creative retreats, and of course, granted, this is a more lavish way of being able to do that, but this is an example of how I'm able to nurture that skill. And I feel like that's exactly what happened. And I am now feeling like I can keep a sustainable length of time going where I'm creative. This might sound like jumble, because it sounds like jumble. It does sound like jumble coming out of my head right now, but all in all, I do want to say that it was a success because I painted. I was set out to paint, and I did paint. I painted 2 pieces. I'll actually share them with you probably in pictures on the screen, because I don't have my notebooks with me right now, but I did 2 pieces. One was acrylic. I really wanted to focus on acrylic and kind of learn more of how to use that. And the other one was watercolor, because I went to an art store and I got to get some locally handmade watercolors, which was incredible. And so yeah, I was very creative in that sense. I also took a lot of content, and I feel like content is also something that is creative, although we kind of lose grasp of that or grip of that in today's day and age with social media moving so fast and us just trying to keep up. But if we are able to slow it down and have these dedicated times and spaces to create content, it can be super creative, and I'm hoping to go back to that. I remember when I was on Instagram many years ago and I used to do getaway trips, I used to have dedicated photo shoots, video shoots, content shoots there, and I would come back after that trip and I wouldn't have posted the entire time. 1, because I didn't want to, but 2, because I didn't have any service there. And I would come back and I would spend about a week or 2 just dumping all of that content onto my social feed, and it just felt so curated and it felt so good, and I want to bring more of that back into my life. And I think I got that done during this trip as well, because I focused more on creation as opposed to keeping up with the speed of social media and making sure that I'm posting every single day. But anyway, all of that is to say that I did learn a lot. I feel like there were lessons plopped up into that little mini ramble, and I did achieve what I set out to. I not only did the paintings like I wanted to, not only did I learn things about me, and not only did I refuel and reignite my creative flow, but I got to go out and learn and experience as well. And I think that's also very important, especially as someone like me, where where I don't really get to go out quite often in my day-to-day. And so I went to an art store, and that was super fun. I got to explore a local quirky art store that had so much personality, had a fantastic person working there, and I also got to go to the Barnes Foundation, which I did not realize was going to be as incredible as it was. I didn't do too much research before deciding to go to the Barnes Foundation. I just wanted to go somewhere local that had something artsy about it. That's all I looked up when it came to the Barnes Foundation. So you probably aren't surprised to find out that I was shocked at how much incredible pieces were in that building. Absolutely insane. I wish I could be there forever. Anyway, I'm so glad that I'm not only nurturing my creative soul, but I'm nurturing that slow living soul as well. The first few months of 2024 have been incredible. I'm so grateful for all of it. But yeah, I think I'm gonna stop rambling now. I feel like I've been rambling for well over 5 minutes. By the way, I've been holding and hugging this mug the entire time. It's my new favorite mug. My friend got it for me. She's the best. And it's so cute. It's 11 ounces. I love a small mug anyway. But I hope you enjoyed this video. I know it was a little all over the place. It's my first video I think I've ever done where I took the camera out and I did a bunch of different things and I experimented with a bunch of different formats all in the same video. So I hope it wasn't too hard to follow. Thank you so much for checking out this video. I really hope you liked it, and I hope at least one tidbit was impactful to you, and I hope you're able to take that and move onward with perhaps a creative retreat of your own or a slow living practice. But thank you so much for being here, and I will talk to you in the next video.